I am with one of my favorite people in the entire world, one of my best friends. You guys will know her as the anchor for the World Poker Tour and also a former PokerNews girl.
Yeah,
Miss Lynn Gilmartin, all the way from down under. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be sitting here across from you virtually.
I'm like, honestly, there have been so many times where I'm like, I wonder if I should just do an interview with Lynn. And then I'm like, am I just using my connections with Lynn to like get all the good interviews? It's like I have to wait like once a year, maybe. Like I can't use it too much. But okay, first of all, I just want to start off with because I was realizing as one of my closest friends, I don't even know where you live anymore. Like, are you still in Melbourne?
No, actually, and it's funny, we don't even know where we live anymore either. That's kind of actually how we've been for 10 years. That's always the hardest question for me to ever answer. People, when you meet like a new person and they ask, "Oh, like where do you live?" Well, it's always a story to it. So Melbourne Melbourne's always heart home. That's where I grew up. But then I've been living in LA for 8 years and also a bit of Mexico City. And then the pandemic has now brought us back to Australia. So we've been in Australia since June last year. But we're on the Gold Coast, which is an amazing part of the country. And that's been a really cool perk, I guess, about the pandemic, in terms of like us just like, because everything's online and virtual, we were able to just look at the map of Australia and go, okay, where do we want to park ourselves for a while? And we chose the Gold Coast because just down the road is the Star Gold Coast. It's the casino that the World Poker Tour has events at. It's our partner, and it's a beautiful casino. So we thought, all right, let's just find a furnished rental and just live here for a while. So that's what we're doing, and it's awesome.
You're loving it.
Yeah, loving it. And I always saw this region of Australia as just a holiday destination, um, because that's just what you know it as. But I never considered it as a place to live. And now suddenly I'm pregnant and we're having a baby here, and we've found all these local communities, and it's actually just a gorgeous place to live. It's a laid back beach lifestyle. And after living in big cities, I mean, Melbourne, LA, and Mexico City, living in big cities my whole life, now being in something that's a little different, it's so nice. But it is still a big city. Actually, it's not like I'm in a remote beach community, but it's a perfect meet in the middle.
A different vibe. I'm with you. And Angel is just, I think, kind of a chill guy to begin with. I feel like he would really just thrive and flourish in a more relaxed kind of take the boy out of Mexico City, put him on the ocean. And so for those who are listening who don't know, you did drop a little hint. There might be a little Bambino on the way, which we will talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about. But you, just before making this move to Australia, again, moving back to Australia, you and Angel tied the knot. And this was sort of, I think, an interesting. You guys had been, I mean, almost a decade, I think, in a relationship together. So talk to us a little bit about, taking the plunge.
Yeah, actually, it's our 10-year anniversary in 2 weeks from now. And we always we've always said, because everyone would always ask, why aren't you two married yet? And that was always something that we weren't rushing. We didn't feel like we needed. We're like, one day, but our families are sprawled all across the planet. My extended family's all in Ireland, actually, and then his is all in Mexico, plus everyone in Australia and in the United States. The idea of getting 4 countries together, woof, it was just always so overwhelming. So it was just kind of easy to be like, yeah, one day. And then the pandemic, we were in lockdown in LA, and in May, randomly this audition popped up. So I got this audition for a film in Australia, and this is May 2020, when the world is completely on pause. And I was like, what on earth am I auditioning for? There's no production going underway right now. But there was this film shooting in Australia. And so I auditioned for it and I sent it, and I thought, why would I get it as well? Because the borders are all closing, and I'm overseas. They'll just pick some actor who's already in Australia. Like, there's no way. But I thought, well, this is fun. And I thought I'd still just give it a crack, and sent it off. And then honestly didn't think I'd hear back. Sure enough, I ended up getting the role. And we realized that, oh my God, we have to fly to Australia next week because we had to fit in 2 weeks of hotel quarantine before production started and all of that. So it was kind of like go, go, go. But because the borders were shut to citizens only and immediate family, we were like, we didn't want to risk Angel not getting the exemption to come into the country with me. So we just decided on the Wednesday, let's drive to Vegas and get married on the Friday. And then we're married. And it was the greatest way to get married. We just loved it. It was the best day because we just hopped. There was no one else but us. There was nothing to overthink. We didn't have to worry about the flowers arriving on time or the cake or just anything. We didn't have to worry about any logistics other than us just getting out of bed in time and driving over to Vegas and having a road trip. And it was just us in the car. And we did a drive through Vegas wedding because then we didn't have to wear masks because we got to stay in the car, right? So we just got married through the window like we were ordering fries at McDonald's. But it was honestly the most beautiful 6-minute ceremony. And we just loved it because there was nothing else around it other than the two of us and us making a commitment to each other. And I remember when my very first trip to Vegas 10 years ago and seeing all of the chapels. And I remember thinking, that's so tacky. I would never do anything like that. Oh my God. And now I'm such an advocate for it because it was just beautiful. And there was just zero stress around it. And then we drove back to LA as well that night because, all the hotels were closed at the time. Vegas was all shut down. And yeah, so we literally spent 8 hours of the day in the car together, just, chatting about our future. And it was just wonderful. So I'm so, and then when we told all our friends and family, like, that's how we're doing it. They're like, of course, that's how you're getting married. That just makes so much sense.
It's so crazy. Even I remember like even my mom and other people asking me like, did Lynn just get married in Las Vegas? Like what happened? And I was like, when I explained your guys' situation with your families and being everywhere, and like everyone was actually kind of like, wow, I guess that makes total sense. Like this is something, but you guys could have done it, I think, a million ways and it would have been beautiful and amazing. However you ended up doing it. I think, when two people really love each other, it's just, I think it's like a beautiful thing. And so you sort of touched on, which is so, I mean, this is something you've been, I think, thinking about or pursuing since, in some way, since you were a little girl. And in the last few years, we've really seen not only Lynn, the WPT anchor, but Lynn, the actress. And it's so interesting because I think too, there was this idea that, being this actress would be something that would make the most sense in Los Angeles. I think that's what most everyone in the film industry thinks, no matter, what their role is. But it feels to me from the outside watching now that actually starting and building this career in Australia is like such a great fit. And they actually have like a really amazing film community going on there. So talk to us a little bit about, this journey and how it's really brought you home.
Yeah, it actually blows my mind that because growing up, if you want to be an actor, it's like you got to go to LA, or if you want to be a director, if you want to do anything in film, you go to LA. And the idea of being in Australia and getting to pursue those opportunities is just, that's so still such a foreign idea to me, but that's what's happening this year. And um it's been a whirlwind. So that film that I told you about, that I booked, that brought us home to Australia, it was a dream. Actually, the trailer just came out yesterday, so I'll post that soon, but it's called This Little Love of Mine. And it was just a beautiful escape into a romantic story. It's kind of like a rom-com. And because it was in June, July of 2020, it was the height of so much unknown with the pandemic. So we had to form this bubble, and we all stayed, like the cast and crew, we all stayed in this one resort, which is also where we were filming. And it was in Palm Cove, which is this gorgeous beach town of Australia. So we were just in paradise. We all got our COVID tests and then formed our bubble. And for a whole month, even more, I think it was 5 weeks, we all had our families there with us, and we basically all lived together and making this beautiful movie just completely in a bubble from the rest of the world and not looking at the news. And just, it was the best way to mentally just get through the 2020 and just escape the chaos for 5 weeks. And it was amazing. So that's coming out soon, and that will always be such a special film to me, just because of how it impacted our world last year, personally. And then that also then snowballed with the same production company. Right after that, we did a second film right after it called Kidnapped, which comes out in a couple of weeks here in Australia. And again, same thing. We just went out into the rainforest of Australia for a month, for a whole month, and we all lived together in a resort, filming at that same resort, and it was amazing. And so that was the first film was one of the first productions to come back, to go back into production in Australia, and really kind of led the way to show how it could be done. And so now, since then, there has been so much happening here in terms of film and TV production. I actually heard that in 2020, almost $2 billion worth of US productions had to get turned away because we just didn't have the capacity to accommodate so much. We don't have enough studios. We don't have enough crew. We don't like it. There was just so much demand and so much happening. Like Tom Hanks and Baz Luhrmann just wrapped Elvis that they were filming here on the Gold Coast for ages. And it's just really exciting how much production's coming here. And so now new studios are popping up all over Australia. Old warehouses are getting turned into massive film studios. And this is cool. It's really cool. And now, because all of Australia's talent has come home, we've got directors and actors and makeup artists and everyone who otherwise just packed up and went to LA. Now suddenly they're all in Australia. And now we're all like, let's make it all happen here. So that's kind of what's happening. It's cool.
I mean, that's so amazing. I can even remember one of my camera guys when we were in Australia, Matthew, who wanted to be a cinematographer and just, trying to figure out for a lot of Australians too, even just trying to get a permit to work in the United States or to come and try to make it isn't even a realistic option. And so
Right.
for a lot of these people who are looking to do this or live this life, there wasn't really any options. And to think now, it's like, I hope they all have the last laugh. I hope it all takes off in Australia and it's like just a gorgeous place. And I'm so happy to see you, being, living this kind of life that we live, where you have these really intense periods of working really hard and then you have some time off, being able to fill some of those times off with something that you really love. And I wanted to ask you if you thought, because I think people misconstrue a lot of the time the idea that being a presenter is like being an actor, or vice versa, that the two roles are just interchangeable, and I think lots of actors even have tried to sort of make the move into this more like anchor type position, and it's not the same job. That being said, I do think learning and being good at either one would help the other one considerably.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how it's changed the way that you come into presenting and anchoring?
Yes, I love this question, because the industry definitely separates the two. You're either an actor or a host, but I don't always agree with that. But you're right, though, that it can be hard for someone to do both, and there's a reason for that. And um, being a host, it's kind of a version of yourself. We have characters within us. We all have different personalities. The person that we are on a Thursday night watching Netflix on the couch is going to be very different to when we're in a business meeting and when we're at the poker table. So we have different versions of us. And so being a host is a particular version of ourselves, while it is still ourselves for sure. And that's what makes a good host too, is bringing authenticity. So it's not being a fake version of yourself that you've, formed, but it's just maybe a little exaggerated. I don't know what it is, but it's a particular type. And that's the same with acting. You're bringing yourself to the character that's on the page. Like when you're acting, you're reading a script and you're completely immersing yourself into this character's world, but you can only really bring what you know to it, kind of like what research you do, but you're still bringing you to it. And that's what makes your version of that character yours. And then, if you play that same character, you're going to do it totally differently. So they are very similar. And studying acting, because I just started my classes. Like, I used to act as a child, and then I sort of let that career dream go. And then when I moved to LA with the World Poker Tour, it took me a few years to get the courage to start an acting class again. But when I did, it was just the best feeling. And So it was only in the last like 5 years that I've been taking acting classes, and it has impacted my hosting massively because you learn things as well in in the acting space that help with hosting. Like the number one thing is the importance of your thoughts at all moments. And I always give this tip to anyone who's making a presentation, who's hosting an Instagram live, whatever. You don't have to be a professional host, but these days we are like hosting something in some way in our lives, or making a speech at a wedding, whatever it is. When you're learning a script of what you're saying, it's just as important to also learn the thoughts that you're going to have behind everything that you're saying in that script. Because if they're not matching, it doesn't come out authentically. It doesn't hit the way you think it's going to. Your tone is all different. Our thoughts come out in so many ways, which we also learn at the poker table, and acting also helps at the poker table. Like we have all these micro expressions on our face, and that's why we all hear about poker face, but it goes beyond that too. It goes into tone of voice and the body language, and the easiest shortcut to master that is to have the right thoughts. And whether they're authentic or not, if you just think, like as if you're thinking, oh my God, I'm terrified right now, please don't call when you're in a hand, but you're trying to look strong, you just, even if you're not feeling it, just have the thoughts of, oh yeah, like just have confident thoughts if you want to look confident, because everything's all over our face. And that's sort of an easy shortcut when it comes to acting and hosting and playing poker and life in general.
That makes so much sense. And that, I think, more or less answers one of the questions I think you saw on Twitter, which was just, how do you manage to stay so positive? It's been a really tough year for a lot of people, but you just seem to be living your best life. Lynn's always living her best life. And I think a lot of that comes down to, though, right, learning to recognize your thoughts and to try to focus on the positive ones.
Absolutely. And the whole idea of positive thinking, it gets a bad rap sometimes too, like, oh, but it's naive or whatever. But oh my God, it's just controlling my brain has changed my life so dramatically, and learning the impact of that. It's just like going to the gym. You have to, if you want biceps, you've got to work on them. And then if you stop going, your biceps they fade away a little bit. And the brain works in the same way. It's a constant practice. And of course we have bad days, and some days it is impossible to find the good, but that knowing that that's okay, and that it's just it's a wave, and that dark cloud can pass. And it's not about ignoring things going on. It's just about seeing the light in everything that you can. And just doing it as in baby steps, it just becomes habitual, and it becomes easier and natural without actively then having to think about it. And so with the pandemic, as shit as it has been for so many people in the world, and there's so many things that are now so different in our life, I don't choose to look at what's missing. I'm choosing to look at, okay, well, what has this given us? This has given us, Angel and I are now in the same country for the first time in 10 years. We've never formally lived in the same country before. We've always been between Mexico and the United States and Australia. There's things like that where it's just, it's so just focusing on has it given me more time with my family? Has it made me realize I need very little, like I don't need as much stuff as I needed. I don't need to be spending as much money going out all the time. I don't need to buy as many clothes. Like there's all these perks that have come from it too. And just trying to focus on that as and that's with everything. Same with poker. If you have a losing session, it's like, okay, well, what did I learn from it? Rather than focusing on what you lost, what did you gain? And just always trying to look at the positive side is so helpful. And it has changed my life.
And also, your life is about to change even more dramatically because the pandemic has given you the gift of a child, which this is something obviously we've talked lots about, when and if this would ever happen amongst our girlfriends. I think, for women who, just like men, your mid 30s is more than likely when you're in sort of the prime of your working years. You've gone through your education, you've gotten some experience behind you, and by the time you're in your mid 30s, you're probably at the peak of your career and a lot of opportunities are coming to you. That being said, this is also the time when your ovaries are either going to like shrivel up into raisins or you're going to produce some spawn. So it is a difficult and interesting time to have children, but I think in this poker space we are fortunate because there's, being in a less traditional environment, I think gives us a little bit of freedom and a lot of space. And also, I think you having a husband who doesn't have like a traditional 9 to 5 is going to make things. I think he will be very deeply invested in this little Bambino's life, which is so nice. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, deciding. You guys got married soon after you decided to have a kid, making that decision. Did you have doubts, questions, etc.? And then now, where you are, not too far away from it. What are you thinking? Are you just like super crazy excited? Are you nervous?
I'm 100% just excited, and so is Angel. It's just been the most beautiful time of our relationship, and we really are in it together, which is so it's so important, like for a couple, when during this time, like I just feel so supported by him. He comes to every appointment, and I know that we're very lucky in that regard because he works from home and plays poker, so not everyone can go, but just wherever he can, he's just there. He's on this journey physically as much as possible as he can, which is just beautiful, and then puts me at ease. So I think that's also why I'm feeling so much joy in this process, and honestly, I'm not feeling any fear yet, but who knows? I'm open to it. Who knows if that changes? I'm not naive to it, but it's just I always knew I had a feeling that I would love pregnancy, and it's still blown me away. Just I mean, it's just it makes me look at my body differently and life differently, and I just yeah, I'm just I'm just loving it. But what you described is so true for women in their 30s, like when you're working for like the larger part of your year towards your career or your life towards your career, and you're now in your 30s and you have this clock ticking over you. It's so true, the pressure of the clock, and but wanting to do it all. And if you just it's so overwhelming, like, well, hang on, if I actively make this choice to change something, am I going to undo everything I've just worked on for the last 20 years? That all plays in your mind. It's really overwhelming. But I've been so lucky, like with the WPT, the most supportive company that one could work for. And it's just, yeah, it's all just fallen into place. Really, I'm just so grateful how much it has fallen into place, because I get to be home in Australia now to have my child, and I'm not missing traveling to events because we're actually like there's an event down the road. I happen to be here for the Star Gold Coast. So it's actually just worked out well. And yeah, I don't know. It just balancing it up can all be overwhelming. But I think at the end of the day, we just have to keep trusting that everything works out. The same way that like even just like this human is growing in my body, and I actually have no active part in it whatsoever, other than just not hurting myself and eating some good food, taking my vitamins. Other than that, there's nothing that I can do to, like, this is all happening on its own. And why does that change? Like, it's so funny, like labor and everything, like it's all nature just does it all on its own. And I remember reading a quote or something years ago, and it's like, why do humans once the baby is in the world now, that we're like, all right, thanks Mother Nature, I'll take it from here. And what we think is we can just figure everything out and have solutions to everything and just plan and no, just keep trusting that it's okay. Things will figure, like, yes, of course, have a plan and think ahead and do as much as you can, but don't freak out if it's not all under control, because that's just not how life works. And as much control as we think we have, we'll get shown otherwise.
And having kids is the biggest exercise in letting go of control I think anyone could ever have. It's the most, you just realize you're not the boss of anything and you're just like along for the ride. And I'm so, so happy that you're having a baby, not just because we get to sort of share this journey together, but because have always known that you were like made to be a mom, and
Mm.
that we do live in this world where it is possible. The idea of having it all is whatever it is, I don't know, but can you have a career and have a child? Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I am so excited for you guys. And, speaking of your career and, all of the things you've worked for the World Poker Tour for a long time, really, I think your face is completely synonymous with the World Poker Tour at this point. And there was a shift, but I have to imagine this was kind of like an upper level shift maybe a couple months ago. That didn't really affect you or your crew of people for the most part, right?
No, you mean the sale of the company? Yeah, there was a huge sale. And no, I mean, if anything, it should provide more opportunity and who knows, but no, that hasn't changed anything at all. It's just actually just even more exciting. It's actually been mind blowing how we've been able to. The buzzword that everyone uses for 2020 is pivot. But we have we've just obviously the World Poker Tour has always been a live tour. That's what we've been for 18 years in the TV show. And we had never gone into the online space really, other than Club WPT, but we've never given away the trophy and the Champions Cup in an online event. And now we've seen the company grow in such a way and explore an area of the industry that we hadn't really had the chance to, because we've been so busy. I mean, we had like 65 live events, I think, in 2019. So now this has given us an opportunity to like really refine Club WPT, which is the product we already had, and like that is expanding and booming. And then now, and we've had events on Party Poker, and we've got one coming up next week on 888 or next month. I mean, there was a $50 million guarantee series on Party Poker that just blew out of the water. So now it's all just growing, and it's all because we've been able to do so much online and also still produce TV shows from our online presence as well. It's just amazing to be able to test out new things, and that's kind of what the WPT's always wanted to do as well, is just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And so we've been able to throw some new things at the wall, and it's really stuck.
It's crazy, and I think we're all fortunate to be in this industry in general. I think it was very possible to pivot, as you say, in ways that maybe other industries it was more difficult. But it's so funny because I think you and I both just have lived in this life where you just don't really have time to do like a lot of things, but especially content that you have ideas for or things that are just going to take time. We just really didn't have time to do a lot of the things, I think. And so I've been really actually impressed by, and from a content perspective, and it makes sense that there's so many people who are looking for productions and film and television and all this stuff now. Like, we're all at home desperately looking for content. And so what a cool time to create some kind of more unusual and off the wall content. That being said, the WPT is actually going to play out some of these live final tables, which
Yes.
they've been sitting around for, a year, some of them, or close to a year. And that's actually what made me think, well, okay, I think about you all the time. Let's get real, you guys. But I have an interview scheduled with Chance Corniff, and he was saying, okay, we're finally playing this out. I hadn't even heard that this was like Monday or Tuesday. I hadn't heard the WPT was going to play out these final tables. But what does this mean for you guys? What is the normal process? They shoot all of this stuff. Are they still using that esports arena, or I don't even know what's happened in the course of the last year to these final tables?
So these ones are actually being shot at the Poker Go studio. And because we're not going to have any audience or anything like that, obviously, given COVID. So then the Poker Go studio has it all, the setup all ready to go. It's such a great space to work from to make a TV show. They've got an awesome setup. So yeah, that's where it's going to be. And it actually backs off of, so we've got the Gardens final table coming up with Chance. That's in March. And it's actually backing onto, so we have a WPT Venetian playing down to the final table the day before we film that. So we're going to have back-to-back TV shows filming or back-to-back champions. Yeah. What is it? March 9th and March 10th in Vegas. So that'll be awesome to finally get those final tables going. And then we've got another 2 final tables. So there was 3 total that were put on hold. And the other 2 are playing out in May. So there's just been a lot of logistics around all of that, getting them all together, because we've got people flying in, and yeah.
Of course. And we talked a lot about even the sort of initial idea of having a lot of these final tables later, this like esports arena idea. And I personally think it's a really interesting concept anyways. I like the idea of like building stories. I like the idea of giving people the opportunity to spend a lot of time thinking about what they're going to do and what's going on. I think it increases the drama.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see live poker happening. And we were talking a little bit before the show. I didn't even realize the WPT is like having events that are dominating last month, or like what's happening. So the WPT is now sort of back in the mode of hosting some live events.
Yeah. So we first started to have some live events in Asia, and they went really well. We've got one coming up in Australia in May. But then we also had our second largest WPT main event in Florida at the Seminole Hard Rock last month. It was amazing to see. Like, clearly everyone was just bursting to get back at the tables. And so the turnout was just amazing. And, you know, the Hard Rock have done everything they can to keep it as safe and clean as possible, like with all of the shields and there's sanitizer everywhere. And the whole thing was a major success. In fact, it was such a success. I just love the story that came out of it, because the champion, Ilyas Muradi, his name is, his story is, there's a whole article on WPT.com if you haven't heard about it, but he was detained in by ICE for, I think, like a couple of years or a year and a half. He moved from Afghanistan to the United States when he was 12 years old. He's lived in the United States his whole life, as long as he remembers. And then he was detained and he was kept in solitary confinement for a while. And it was all, they wanted to deport him for some outdated paperwork. And it's just horrendous, like, to treat someone like that and put them in solitary confinement. Like, no human deserves anything like that. It's just horrible. And then they just released him because and he still lives in the United States. Like, they couldn't deport him because he's basically American. And so he had gone through this horrific time of his journey, and then happened to, and I think he was released into, I won't say, it was recently, like 2019, I think. And then anyway, he was in Florida, and he plays poker, but he didn't intend on playing the WPT main event. He was actually supposed to fly home. He happened to miss his flight, decided to enter a satellite, just like, oh, stuff it, here we are, I'll just play a satellite, might as well. Wins the satellite to the main event, and then ends up winning the main event. And it was the second largest main event we've ever had. Like, it's just such an amazing story. I think he won like $800,000. I just love this story so much. And I think we're going to be hearing a lot more from him. And now he'll get to play in the Tournament of Champions because that's part of the prize. So we're going to see him a lot more. And I just think that's a beautiful story.
I mean, being in the poker media, we are pretty consistently looking for a good story and hoping desperately that the good story is the person that wins. And like 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be that person. But also, I mean, that's horrific. And it looks like that guy was due for some run good. Like, it was time for him to hit something. And again, it goes back to what you were saying about just, you know, trusting in some things instead of freaking out that your flight, you know, you missed your flight or whatever. Like, why not just test your luck and jump into a satellite to a gigantic tournament? So actually,
in whatever.
I wanted to talk to you though too about the tournament coming up in May. I feel like I saw on someone else's social media that they were like, "Ooh, there's going to be like a special guest at this big tournament in Australia coming," which I was like, "Oh, I hope it's Lynn. I bet it's Lynn." But is poker happening again in Australia legitimately? I mean, are these casinos and poker rooms running on the regular, or is this just for this event?
No, it's actually, I feel like we're on another planet here. Like, because the borders have been shut and we've contained the virus and there just is no virus in Australia, we've been able to move about quite freely. But it's been a slow and steady step by step, and it's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and in terms of gathering groups. And so concerts are back now, and we can all gather in with big events. And so the poker tables at the Star, they opened up cash games, I think it was about 2 months ago, 7-handed. We were able to, because they were able to have their other tables open 4-handed. So it wasn't till the restrictions lifted to 7 that they opened poker, and that's all been going really well. It felt so good. I went down for the opening night for the first cash game, and it was so fun to take a seat at that table. Like everyone, they were opening a brand new table, and all 7 of us players were just like beaming with excitement, and we're all just like, hi. So excited to see each other and to play cards. And the dealer, we're all just joking around. Like the dealer's like, bear with me, I'll probably, I need some help remembering how to do this. And so it was just so nice to unanimously come back together like that. And so cash games have been running for a couple months there now, and tournaments are just starting back up again. And so we'll have an event there soon. It hasn't been formally announced, so I guess I can't say I don't know what I can say, but we will have an event. It was supposed to happen last year, but we went to the Star for the first time in 2019, and the turnout was so positive. Like we just had players lined up out the door because we didn't have too much of a presence in Australia before that. Our show doesn't air here, or it hasn't for a while, and it was our first WPT event in Australia. So we didn't know, like, what would will everyone travel for it? And hell yes, every poker player in Australia came up to the Gold Coast for it. So we will do that again. But actually, just last weekend, we do have the WPT League, which is our pub poker league. So it's all self-dealing, low stakes, playing in a pub, really like laid back. The guy who runs it here in Australia has done such an amazing job at growing it. And there's this thing called the Quarterly Poker Championship, which he does every 3 months. And we just had it last week. And the turnout, the whole series had a $550,000 guarantee. And the series, which was a 5-day series, ended up having $1.2 million of prize money come through it. This is pub poker. There were 10 dealers available for like final tables and the high roller events. But in terms of the main event and all the side events, we're all dealing our own cards. Like it was amazing to see how many players turned out for this. And we just had this huge convention center space. They just put in a bunch of trestle tables, and it was so fun. And again, it was that same vibe of everyone just being so stoked to be back at a poker table. So yeah, poker is booming here in Australia. There's so much demand, and it's back.
So is there any movement, and this may or may not be something that you're super familiar with, or obviously it doesn't necessarily have to be in your wheelhouse, but is there any movement in terms of getting the major brands back online in Australia?
Yeah, that I don't know, actually. I haven't, it's a good question, but there are poker players, people in the industry trying to drive the change there, but I don't know what the status is right now. At the moment, we're sitting pretty much exactly the same as the United States in terms of just praying for the best.
Jada, we'll take what we can get at this point. Like we'll take pub poker, we'll take like whatever we can get. My baby just came home. I'm not sure if you can hear her. I can, and I've got to put her down and do all the things which you're just getting ready for. I can't wait. And we may or may not, everyone, just mark your calendars, have a pretty broad reunion at some point in the next few months before we pop these babes out.
Yes, that would be amazing. I just cannot believe Sarah and I are 2 weeks apart in our pregnancy. Like, what are the odds of that?
It's
also,
so
we have the same birthday. We're both born on November 3rd, and we're going to have imagine if we have our child on the same day. That's
the weirdest thing, is that's like totally within reason. Like would not be surprising at all. And yeah, it's pretty bizarre. And so and also it's about that, that trusting and just knowing, because I never saw myself in this space or this industry. I don't think you did either to begin with. And then when you find these people and you just realized that this was like totally meant to happen. Like a million years ago, we probably decided we were going to do this. And here we are. It's one of those things that just makes me be like, yep, okay, I know I'm not the boss of it, and I'm just like enjoying the ride.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to see you. And when we hang this up really quick, you just have to wait because I want you to say hi to Vera.
Oh, yes, please.
All right. All right. Well, tell everyone where they can find you. I know you guys probably all already follow Lynn Gilmartin. Like, don't pretend like you don't. But if you don't, where can they find you so they can follow all of your exploits and your coming journey?
I've spent most of my time on Instagram. So at Lynn Gilmartin on Instagram is probably the best place.
She keeps it pretty updated. It was a little sparse there for a minute. I was a little disappointed. I need to keep my Lynn.
That was first trimester. I slept 3.5 months away. So I went so quiet on social media.
I was struggling, but I'm glad to see you back. And I'm super looking forward to seeing this new trailer. In fact, it's interesting because the Kidnapped trailer clearly came out before this romantic movie trailer. There must have been a lot of editing going on. I don't know, but I'm super excited to see it. And we will, of course, be just waiting in anticipation and trying to, I don't know if we have to find these things illegally on the internet or what we have to do, but we need to watch all of your movies.
Well, no, they will come to the States. I just can't tell you on what platform yet, but it will soon.
Okay, good, because I need them. All right, cool. Well, you guys find her at Lynn Gilmartin, and yeah, on to the next.
Thanks so much, Sarah.